We are live. Hello, everybody. Mike Miazga here with the American Supply Association. I'd like to welcome you to another one of our town hall meetings with ASA members. Today, I am graced by manufacturers rep greatness on all levels. We'll get the rep aspect of how businesses are dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. As we said on earlier webinars, earlier town hall meetings, these little get-togethers are a huge service to the membership of ASA, given a boots on the ground, real-time feel for how folks are operating their businesses during these challenging times. And also, our hope is that gives you a little comfort and maybe you take away a couple of best practices from these sessions. I'm joined today, first upper left corner, Tim Morales of down in Alabama, Tim Morales and Associates. How you doing, Tim?
Wonderful, thank you.
All right, lower left, Brian Burke, the Burke Agency up in Michigan. Nice to see you, Brian.
Hello.
And Michael Hobbs down in the lower right, Boca Raton, Florida, where it's probably nice and warm. Car Company. Nice to see you, Michael.
Good to see you, Mike. Thank you.
All right. Just off the bat, with the virus itself, have you guys had any direct impact in your company? Folks that came down with it, maybe they know some people that have come down with the customers. What are you hearing from your factories without naming company names? What's kind of the situation?
We have not been directly affected. We've had some scares and some tests, but we personally have not been affected, and I'm not aware of any widespread issues at any of our principal factories.
We've had our no direct impact within our agency or family, thank goodness. And we're kind of in a hot zone here, as they say. Some of our manufacturers have had some impact. A couple have had to shut their plants to do some cleaning because they had a case inside the plant. Had basically led to 2 or 3 day shutdowns, depending on the manufacturer. And then they were all back up and running. So we have had some impact on the manufacturer side, but not at our agency.
We had one employee's daughter actually was diagnosed with COVID-19, but she fortunately was a very minor case, and she's fine, and she's made it through it okay. And then ironically, her father, who works for us, didn't get it, nor did her mother. So she had it and was quarantined in her bedroom, and she's feeling fine and she's recovered. In terms of our manufacturers or our customers, nobody, I mean, we've had, similar to Brian, we've had a couple of manufacturers do some deep cleaning, but nothing substantial at this point.
Good to hear. On your agency level, are you doing anything differently, social distancing wise? We're obviously working from home. How have you changed your methods related to the virus?
I'd say we changed everything in a lot of ways. But we have 2 people in each of our 2 offices, and they are keeping the offices up and running, and the essential services, receiving material, shipping some minor things out, and helping out with the phones. But everybody else is working remotely at this point.
Yeah, we're similar. All of our outside salespeople are buttoned up and working from the house. About 75% of our inside sales team is working from the house, and then we have a skeleton crew in each of our offices. We have 2 offices, and then we have a warehouse employee in each office still shipping and receiving what needs to go out. But yeah, at this point, it's pretty much all remote.
And likewise, we took everybody off the road on March 13th and immediately began taking the balance of our inside people remote. We already had about 25% of our people remote for the past several years, and now we've inverted those numbers. We're down to about 25% inside and 75% outside. So we're certainly in a stand down mode and trying to do all we can to give people space and keep them healthy.
When you look at the last 7 to 10 days of this pandemic, what has changed from you business-wise, operationally-wise, furloughs, wage cuts, anything of that nature? What's been the biggest the biggest change when you look at where you guys were at 10 days ago to current time right now?
I think for us, it's been interesting. I think everyone's gotten accustomed to the new norm, the new normal. Our customers have, our manufacturers have, our employees have. 10 days ago, I think we were all still trying to figure out what this was going to look like and how we're going to interact with each other. But now it seems like people have kind of hit their strides. So we're doing a lot of trainings virtually with our customers, PKs, lunch and learns. So I think people are now kind of accepting what this is going to look like moving forward for the next couple of weeks. We are starting to see a little bit of a softening in our market. We're fortunate in Florida in that construction is still going on. We've seen the service side drop off just because I don't think people want plumbers in their homes unless they've got to come in, or they don't want anybody in their homes unless they've got to come in. But our construction sites are still moving forward, and both commercially and residentially. But that continues to soften, and I think we'll see that continue to soften throughout throughout April and May. But I think the biggest thing we've seen is just accepting of, hey, this is what it is, and this is what we're going to look like moving forward for the next couple of weeks or next couple of months.
I would say the same as Michael. We certainly have all gotten used to Zoom and WebEx and Microsoft Teams and different ways to communicate, and helping our customers get on board with those same technologies the last 10 days. While we used it a lot with our manufacturers, it was not common for us to use these technologies with distributors and contractors and showroom people. And so we're all learning how to do that today. The last 10 days, the biggest change I would say in Michigan, we had a hard stop to pretty much all economic activity on March 24th. So we're in our third week of a hard shutdown in the state, and the last 10 days, the order volume has shrunk to, pretty near zero. The economic activity, the sales orders have dropped off dramatically. A lot of our distributors have started to lay off people and are using skeleton crews in the warehouse or at the counter or in the offices. So we're seeing layoffs hit across the industry that we really did not see in March. People were being very careful in March, but there was still enough business to accommodate everybody working. So that's been a big change the last 10 days. We don't see that changing anytime soon.
Along the Gulf Coast, we roared for the first 3 weeks when we got off the road, and we did see some slowdown last week. And yesterday, the phones were slow. Primarily, where we're seeing the biggest drop-off is luxury and showrooms. Many of the showrooms now are not seeing customers. Everything is remote, so we have seen a big drop there. But, yeah, we certainly, feel the turn down coming.
From the rep standpoint, a lot of outside sales involvement, folks on the road making visits, and a lot of different customer touch points. How has this affected, this pandemic affected the basic day-to-day operations of the rep function, which is of course different than other segments of the supply chains, distribution and manufacturing?
Well, from our standpoint, the big challenge was technology, was, implementing, getting multiple people remote quickly. And our inside team, Jessica Kalidas, operations manager, did a tremendous job making that happen. I guess the biggest thing for the outside people, maybe Michael could touch on this more, but, my wife's ready for me to get back on the road. My hairdresser, she misses me. So it's definitely the outside people socially are used to being on the road. They're used to being out there and active. So there's definitely a challenge keeping them motivated and focused.
Yeah, we're no different. We're our job as a rep is to go out and create demand, right? That's what we do for our manufacturers, and we're looking at how we do that differently now. And part of that obviously is still doing the trainings and communicating and making sure we're present. But a lot of that is understanding what our customers are going through and what our channel is going through, and then how can we help them out? How can we maybe do something differently? Maybe make their lives a little easier. And, we talked about it before. Some of this comes back to emotional intelligence and understanding what they're dealing with on a daily basis, and recognizing that we're all in this together. and we all have to make it through this together. So as partners, what does that mean and what does that look like? We'll get back to creating demand in 60 days, but for now, what can we do to enable our customers and our contractors or engineers to survive this and be around in 60 days so we can all enjoy hopefully the comeback.
I would say the transition maybe was a little easier for the outside salesperson because they sort of were remote to begin with. They are used to cell phones. All their customers call their cell phones. So they already had that way of contacting them. And they all had laptops. And again, we're used to being remote in that sense. So the technology side of it was maybe easier for the salespeople in our organization. It's certainly hard to stay at home because for the most part, the salespeople are, as you said, used to being face-to-face. They're a gregarious group, and they like being with the customer and being with their friends. And this quarantine has been maybe difficult on them in that sense.
When did you guys? I know we were on the road at a buying group meeting when the first part of this hit. That was on a Friday, and then by Tuesday we were working remotely. But when did you guys first start really planning for what was to come here?
I would say probably 2 weeks before the hard shutdown, we started talking about different things that we had to have in place. We started sending one person home at a time, particularly from our inside staff, and having them test out systems, their computers, their phone, how the phone calls get transferred to them from our system here in the office. Then we sent 2 people home at a time. We just kind of tried to figure out what was a potential problem and what kind of resources and tools that they needed home. For instance, they all wanted to have 2 computer screens at home. So we found out right away they needed to take their computer screens with them when they went home. So we did have some time to test the systems before we actually sent everybody home when the real hard shutdown came.
We're fairly similar. We started to do it on a rotating basis, like Brian, where we wanted to figure out what the problems were before we had a hard shutdown and we weren't able to figure it out. So yeah, same thing. We started to take the office phones home. We're all voice over IP, so that worked out well. But we discovered that we needed special adapters. So then, of course, you got to get those ordered. Some people, believe it or not, didn't have a home computer. We wanted people to dial in. Some people didn't have a computer that maybe was up to the technology that was needed to dial in. So we had to do some upgrades on that. But our Jim Smith, who's our operations manager and inside sales manager, has done a great job of getting in front of that and recognizing some of these issues before the hard shutdown. But we probably started to do that maybe around the first part of March, starting to recognize there could be something coming at us.
Yeah, we started on March 13th. We brought everybody off the road, and then by that Monday, we were already inverting our numbers from 75% inside to 25% inside, and executing social distancing.
Have you guys applied for any of the federal programs that were passed, Paycheck Protection Program, things of that nature? And if yes, how has that process gone so far?
We definitely did. We actually were contacted by our bank on a Sunday evening and spent 2 or 3 hours filling out the forms and emailing things back and forth. And frankly, haven't heard a word since. So it's been over a week without any reply, which is surprising to me and disappointing, but that's where we're at.
I've learned a few lessons during this whole experience, one of which is to make sure you have a banking relationship with someone who has an SBA affiliation. We did not, and I tried, but nobody would let me in. So we have a bank that we've used for years, and a good bank, but no SBA affiliation. So they, at the corporate level, got involved and partnered with an SBA bank. So it took them about a week just to figure that out. And so talk about having sleepless nights. I couldn't get the paperwork filled out. I didn't have a portal. I felt like this money was being used up before we had the opportunity to participate. So finally, our bank got their portal up and running. And then the other issue I've had, we acquired a company in January of this year, and so they look at prior year's payroll, and our average prior year payroll does not match our current payroll. So that's been a bit of a struggle, and I never want to look a gift horse in the mouth. And I appreciate the support we can get from our government, but we're still kind of tiptoeing through that and understanding what we'll get. But again, our average payroll in March was not the same as our average payroll of March of last year. So again, trying to work through that and get them to understand that's been challenging.
Yeah, from our standpoint, it started a little rocky. The first 2 or 3 days, the portal had some issues. There were also some changes in the application. We actually filled out our application 3 times, but within, say, 72 hours of the opening date, we were in. And frankly, I got a call yesterday from my bank, and we've already been approved. So we are, for such a large measure, I've got to give credit. I was surprised that it went really as smoothly as it did, even though there were some bumpy roads, especially the first few days. But yes, we are participating in the CARES Act, and we have been approved.
Now, Michael, you touched on it earlier about the human element and all this. We talk a lot about business best practices and things of that nature. How are you guys best communicating, the mental or the emotional toll that's, something like, this, none of us in our lifetimes have ever seen anything like this. How are you keeping, the spirits up of the folks at your agencies?
Yeah, I mean, that's been a challenge. It's, we have to recognize that professionally they're going through a lot, our employees, our associates, and then personally they're going through a lot. They're not, they're worried about interacting with their customers, but they're also worried about getting food, going to the grocery store. How are their parents doing? How are their children doing? So there's a lot involved here, and it's a very heavy emotional toll. And I think we've just tried to acknowledge that. We're all going through this together, and what can we do to help each other out? We have a weekly video call, which we've been doing, and that's a good cadence for us. So the whole company is on a video call, and we try to have a little bit of fun. We go through the agenda, we give updates, and then each of our sales managers communicates daily with their sales team. And then on Fridays, we've been having a happy hour, and so the company jumps on a video happy hour, and everyone's been well behaved. I'm happy to report. But we've had a good time, and it's a very serious situation, but we wanted to bring a little levity to it and have some fun. And so we've actually rotated themes for the happy hours and just trying to mix it up a little bit. But a lot of it goes back to just being present, being active, being proactive with your employees, understanding what they're going through, and talking to them, really talking to them and understanding what their challenges are and what they're dealing with.
We've done much of the same sort of things, the happy hours. We had a birthday party that we celebrated for one of our associates in a Zoom meeting. The same sort of things with the Friday happy hours, and maybe more often than just Friday. We've done that. And I also feel it's important to get together. The video has been more important than maybe we realized prior to this for this kind of an interaction. And we've made it a point to get everybody together at least once a week, and then smaller groups of our inside out salespeople or our outside salespeople all together as a group as well. And we're trying to keep those meetings relatively short at this point, half an hour if we can. We've found out that an hour is way too long. We're being asked to do, in some cases, 3 and 4 webinars a day right now. So we're trying to keep them as short as we can with our own team.
Yeah, and they always say all good ideas have beards, or this too shall pass. But these are times when you think of the Serenity Prayer. I mean, there's things you can change, there's things you can't. You got to know the difference, and you got to accept them. So I think focusing on the things I can change are really, really important. I also recommend limiting news. There's no channel that anybody watches by whatever political makeup they have that's not going to make them angry. So you need to get enough news to protect your family, to stay safe and be informed. But I think sitting there all day can be a bad thing too, especially for our outside people who may not be preoccupied. And then just at this moment, speaking of people in our connections, I think I should send a shout out to Steve Cook, who lost his father over the weekend, our ASA chairperson. So here's to you, brother. We're prayers are with you.
No doubt. What is the what do you take away from the pandemic so far from a business perspective? What have you learned that you could use going forward?
Well, we always have had to try to, as an agency, tried to be well capitalized and, have a rainy day fund. And I can say that's come in very handy this time because this came on so quickly and so sudden that I think if you had a lot of debt, if you didn't have a well capitalized firm, it would be difficult to survive something as dramatic as this drop. Because we basically went from having the best first quarter in our company's history to where we are today, which is a very low amount of volume overall in our territory. So it's a good strategy to be well capitalized and to be ready for those surprises, those black swans.
Yeah, I would agree with Brian. I've learned cash is king. It's good to have that war chest and make sure you're well capitalized. I also I've come to appreciate proactive communication a lot more. It's something I thought that we used to do fairly well as an agency, but I think this has really taught me how to get in front of some of these issues and how to talk to employees about them. And really have conversations. So I think it's helped. I think we've learned a lot about communicating as an agency and supporting each other and being present.
Yeah, and ditto those two comments. I mean, it's very important in life to be grateful when things are good, and we've been through a really strong period. That being said, those of you that know me know one of my, I guess, famous statements is I'm powered by fear, because there is always something around the corner and you should always be prepared. And to Brian's point, Michael's point, staying well capitalized and being responsible when times are good has put us in a good position. That being said, I'm scared. We're powered by fear. So we're planning for months, not days or weeks.
Yeah, we think the recovery, at least here, will start in May. We got to get out of this quarantine first. That's the most important thing. And then the economic recovery, maybe over a 60-day period to get back to some sense of normalcy. So that's a very optimistic view versus, say, 2009, when we weren't really quite sure when the economy would recover. And it took a long time to recover. So it seems this time that there is a light at the end of the tunnel that we can see. And that keeps us all going every day.
Do you think it's a different situation here? I mean, I know Tim and Brian, you're talking about robust business at the start of the year. Do you think because of that, we'll get to a recovery in your markets a little bit quicker because that activity was there?
I would love to believe this is going to be a touch and go, but I personally don't feel. I think we really need to plan for months, if not a couple of years. I'd like to believe it's going to come back, but I think especially the damage to the service industries, to retail's already been in a fierce battle with e-commerce, and now they're going to be affected. So you're going to see layoffs at the malls. It's got to have a ripple effect through residential, without a doubt. So at least from my perspective, we're going to plan for the worst, we're going to pray for the best, and we're going to live with what comes our way.
There's a good bit of pent-up demand, houses that are 90% done, apartment complexes that are under construction, hotels, office buildings. I think a lot of that work will get finished. So there is that business to look forward to. I'm more concerned about, as Tim said, a developer that was going to do an apartment complex or was going to do a new subdivision. I think they're going to pause and they're going to wait to see how the economy recovers. And so we're necessarily going to have a lower level of business in the second half of 2020 while everybody evaluates the financial impact of what just happened.
I agree. And in Florida, it's still 85 and sunny. So I think people still want to migrate down to Florida, and I think we'll still see some of that. I'm just not sure of the hangover that the economy will have You look at Disney furloughing, 50,000 people. Florida is so dependent on tourism and on the service industry. I don't know how that's going to affect our general recovery versus migration and some of the things that are driving our economy. So much like Tim, we're kind of looking at this as maybe the next quarter, 6 months, 3 quarters. I'm not sure, but we'll keep an eye on it certainly, and hopefully it'll be quicker. That's what we're all praying for. So.
Mike, if you buy a car made in Michigan, I'll come down and visit Disney World.
Well, guys, I appreciate you taking a couple minutes out of I know hectic and busy schedules to do this. Again, the first couple ones that we've done of this with the distributors have been greatly well received, and again, our hope is that folks get a good real-time boots on the ground feel of what's going on from the manufacturer's rep standpoint, and hopefully if there's reps that are watching this, they take a couple of best practices away from that. My thanks again, Tim Morales, Brian Burke, Michael Hobbs. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Mike.